Hey, it's Christy, and I'm going to share my story of how I got to become a full-time artist and paint horses for a living. And I did not go to art school. I didn't even start painting until I was 34. So hopefully you'll find this entertaining or maybe some tidbits you can pick up that'll be helpful for you in your life. So I actually started my career in fashion design. So I went to school in London and studied fashion design, and then I worked in the industry for 3 years. And I started off loving fashion because of the creativity in it. I wanted to open my own store and sell my own designs and sell custom clothing. But working in the industry just kind of, I saw some ugly sides of it that I don't really want to get into, but it just, after 3 years of working in the industry, it just wasn't feeling in alignment with what I wanted to do. But there were a couple of key skills and just lessons that I learned that I feel were really beneficial and helped me in, I guess, the journey of like getting to discover doing art and doing this full time, because any business that you start, there's some key things that you need to have that lead to success. So the first thing was getting comfortable with sales. So even though I started as a designer, because it was a small company, I was very quickly working the showroom. So clients would come in talking about what they were looking for their store, and I would chat with them. Sometimes I would try on some of the clothing, get to know kind of more about their store, their clientele, because we had such a vast variety of things. We sold swimwear, we sold women's clothes, men's clothes, coats, outerwear, like a little bit of everything. And so it really helped me learn how to kind of ask questions and get curious to find out like what people were looking for, and then be able to help them with those things, and just get over that kind of like stage fright of like doing sales, because it feels kind of scary at first. But if you approach it with curiosity and just wanting to get to know a person and what they need, what they're looking for, and really just being helpful, that is what's made me successful in sales, both of artwork and just throughout other careers that I've had, because I've had a few. And so also during my time working in the fashion industry, I was working trade shows. So again, got comfortable working with people, and even doing cold calling, which I hated doing. So I'd be calling up stores, asking them if they were interested in carrying some of our clothing lines. And that got me, it was the start of getting comfortable being uncomfortable, because I hated doing outbound sales. But the more I kind of forced myself to do it, or my bosses forced me to do it, I got more comfortable with it. And I'm really glad that I did have that experience, because again, it's like it got me comfortable with now when I'm doing an exhibition, I'm more comfortable talking to people and just asking them questions, getting curious about why my work resonates with them, and not feeling like I have to like sell, but just coming from a place of curiosity. And even with, I mean, when someone follows me on Instagram or TikTok, I always reach out to people that follow me and, just ask questions like, what was it about my artwork that resonated with you? And I think that's a really good skill to have, regardless of any business that you have. If you're an artist or any sort of entrepreneur, you need to be able to learn how to sell whatever your product or service is. So that was a great experience. So when I realized that I didn't really want to work in the fashion industry anymore, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but friends and family had kind of mentioned that they were not tired of hearing me complain about it, but that they noticed that I had complained quite a bit about how I didn't want to work in that space anymore. And so that was kind of my, that was my, how do I put this? I think it's a trap that a lot of people get into, of just complaining about how things are and wanting them to change. And when people started telling me like, hey, you've been talking about like wanting to make a move for a while, like, why don't you do something about it? Basically, that's just, I think that's a really strong thing that we need to listen to, of like, hey, if you're just if you're frustrated or upset with something and you just keep complaining about it, that's not going to change it. Like, you need to change something. So I really started asking myself, well, what's something that I possibly see myself doing? What am I interested in? And while working in the fashion design industry, I was doing sales, design, and I was also involved in like updating our website, doing our email marketing campaigns. And we also had like a flyer, like a catalog that we would send out to stores. And I really enjoyed designing the catalog. I enjoyed doing photography of the clothing and then kind of putting it together and designing the composition for the catalog. And so at the time, I was like, well, maybe I'd like to get into graphic design. And coming from fashion design, when I was in school, they taught us how to use, Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, but just kind of like first like initial level of those tools. It didn't really get super deep. So I thought, okay, well, what if I could go back to school and take some courses and get into graphic design. And so I started chatting with friends of mine about just the thoughts and ideas that I had. And one friend was like, oh, well, if you're interested in doing graphic design, like you could take some night classes and work at, she was working at a software company and she worked really closely with the graphic designer because she was managing the marketing team. And they had at the time a need for someone helping with like social media and just like entry level marketing things, which I had very little experience in, but I'm good at writing and communicating. So she's like, you'll pick it up, really quickly. So I took a leap of faith, and left my job in fashion design. And I started working at this software company, doing like managing their Twitter, writing some blog posts where she would kind of tell me, hey, here's what like customers want to learn more about, or yeah. And again, I felt very uncomfortable at first. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. But I think if you just had this mentality of like, I'm going to learn, I'm going to try, and I'm just going to keep learning and experimenting and I'll figure it out. And it worked. I ended up, really enjoying my time working at that company. I ended up working there 8 years. And so I started off working as an entry level position, and I was taking night classes, doing graphic design. And then I started working with just people that I know, friends, kind of friends of friends, designing logos, designing websites, and just kind of helping out with like branding and stuff. So I was doing this on the side while working full time. And then I was kind of like, do I want to do graphic design and work with more clients, or do I want to kind of keep moving up in my career? And at the time, I was getting more and more work and I was getting promoted at the tech company. So eventually I was managing the marketing team and I really enjoyed that. I felt like I was really learning a lot, and the work with clients doing logo design and stuff, it just felt, I don't know, I didn't love it. There were things that I just didn't love about it. And so I kind of put that on the back burner and just focused on my career in marketing. And I actually ended up working my way up to being the head of marketing. And so I was overseeing a few departments there. And then something kind of shifted in me. I got to this place where I felt like I was just so focused on work and I didn't have any like creative outlets. And as a creative person, I just felt like something was missing. I just wasn't happy. There were things within the company and the executive team that were kind of shifting, and I just didn't feel like it was a good fit anymore. And so, yeah, again, after chatting with friends and family and people telling me, like, you've been complaining about this for a while, like, it's time to do something, I decided to quit working there. And initially I told them, I'll give them a couple of months because I was like in a, high level role. I thought, okay, well, I'll give them longer for them to find someone, and that will give me longer to either, I didn't know if I was going to just take a couple months off and then start finding a new job, or what I wanted to do. And so I told them that I was done. And within like a couple of days, I had this idea of, well, why don't I try doing marketing consulting and do that on my own? Because for friends, I had given just free advice of helping them with their social media marketing, websites, just kind of marketing strategy. And I thought, okay, well, maybe that's something that I could do. So I lost my train of thought. Okay, so yeah, so I took another leap of faith and decided to start doing consulting, and took a course on how to get my first couple of clients. Followed that kind of course to a T. It sort of worked, and kind of helped me learn how to use social media and Instagram specifically for consulting clients. And I also started working with a mindset coach just to kind of help me stay focused, because I felt like I was a little bit lost or just unsure of what I was doing and where I wanted to go with it. And that really helped me kind of build the mindset of always, asking myself, like, what do I want? Where do I want to go? Where do I envision myself in the future? What kind of life do I want to have? What types of things do I enjoy doing? What type of things do I not love doing so much? And maybe I would want to outsource those things, or hire people to do those things. And so there was a lot of experimentation. I did end up hiring an executive assistant, and then realized that the clients that I was doing that work for and then paying this assistant for, I didn't love doing, so ended that. I had lots of clients that I thought would be a great fit, and then after working together for a couple of months or a year, I just realized they just weren't really what I wanted. And so constantly asking myself, like, what is it that I want long term in that vision, kind of help me make decisions in the now about getting to there. Because if you don't have a goal and you're just kind of living day by day and just seeing what happens, then I think it's difficult to build a life and business that you're going to love, because you don't know where you're going. And so I am a strong believer in having clarity and like a long-term goal, or at least like vision of where you want to go. And that's always helped me make decisions around clients that I choose to work with, and things that I choose to do and not. And I learned a lot throughout working with other companies and consulting with them on marketing about things that I've brought with me in my career, of like, hey, you have to know who your ideal client is. Like, who are you creating your product or service for? And I carry that with me in my art now, of like, who do I envision buying my artwork? What areas of the world do I see my artwork in? What kind of interiors do they have? What's their style? What are their interests? And that's helped me kind of really just get a bit more narrow and focused on who my ideal client is. So when I started painting, which I'm jumping around a bit, but when I started painting, I was doing like painting everything, like women, flowers, landscapes. And you really have to focus and know like who is your niche. So going back a bit to the consulting work, where am I? I'm going all over the place. All right, I'm going all over the place. I'm going to have to figure out a way to kind of merge this together. Yeah, so just some things that I learned both in like working for a company in a marketing role, in a leadership role, and then also starting my own consulting firm. I learned that it's really important to constantly experiment and just focus on what's working and align that with your vision. Like if there's things that are in line with your vision that aren't working, okay, well, how can I tweak these and, adjust and get that feedback loop going so that you are figuring out what is working. And I think storytelling is a big thing as well. Working in the software space, a lot of people or marketers try to approach it with, okay, well, here's all the features and what it can do. And in my experience, that doesn't sell software anywhere near as effectively as when you share a story of, well, here is a typical situation that our, ideal customer is in, and here were problems that they have, and here's what they were trying to do and why what they were using wasn't working. And so then when they started using our software to do this and this, that really helped their business, and so they don't have to do these manual things, and they were able to use the software to help them use XYZ. So using stories to market and help people understand what it is that your product or service is, that's going to connect with people more. And so I take that into my artwork as well. I don't share, what kind of paint I'm using. I don't share like my technique. I don't talk about those things. I talk about the story behind where the idea came from and what that means to me. And so I paint horses, and so I talk about why I love horses and why I want to have them in my life and why I want to have my own horse and why I love spending time at the stables every week. And that's what's built that connection and helps the right people that also love horses and love neutrals and earth tones, that helps them find me and connect with my work. And so while I was building my consulting business, I think I was in like year 3 of the business. So things were starting to work more effectively. The money was more consistent. I had clarity on the types of clients that I worked with. And I got to a point where I was working with a client who, without getting too in the weeds, they had a platform for artists. So I was talking with their ideal clients of artists and helping them learn to use our platform. And there was one artist story. His name is Ali Sabit. He's a very well-known artist in LA. And he was sharing his story about how he didn't start painting until he was 35. And I was 34 at the time, and I thought, oh, like it wouldn't be too late if I wanted to experiment and try that. And I was feeling like I was missing this creative outlet in my life. And so I went out and I bought some paints and I just started painting random abstract stuff that I thought was cool. And it was like, well, maybe not cool. I thought it was fun to create, but I was like, it doesn't look that great. But I just kept, just doing it for fun in the evenings and on weekends. And then eventually I started creating some stuff that I thought was, pretty decent. And I thought, oh, why don't I just share this on Instagram and see what happens? And to my surprise, people actually really liked it. They resonated with it. And so the feedback was really positive, obviously, because it was just my friends and family on social media seeing it. And they really liked it. So I thought, okay, well, let me keep doing some more of this. And it was actually my therapist that posed the question, have you ever thought about doing art as a career? And at first I was like, oh no, like definitely not. I wouldn't be able to do that. Like I'm a marketer. I help other artists with marketing their work, but I wouldn't know how to market and sell my own work, which as soon as I said it, like I realized how silly that was and how I was limiting myself. And so I sat with that and thought, okay, well, what if I did art as a career? What would that look like? And I was just kind of thinking about it. And I was at this point where some of the clients I was working with in my marketing business just weren't feeling in alignment with what I wanted to be doing. So I kind of fired some of those clients and was expecting to get another client in another space. And then all of a sudden, in like 2 weeks, I had 3 people reach out to me about doing like painting something specifically for them and that like wanted to buy my artwork. And at first I was really scared and I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to sell my artwork. I don't know if I'm ready to do that. But I'm the type of person that whenever I feel or hear myself say, oh, I don't know if I can do that, I try to like challenge myself with, well, what if I could? What would that look like? If I could, would it be interesting? Would it be fun? And so I took a bit of a leap of faith and I said, okay, let me take on one commission. I think it was like $500 or $600, wasn't very much. But then it felt really good and it felt really exciting. And so I thought, well, maybe my therapist is right. Maybe this is something that I could do full time, because she had often heard me talk about how I struggled with work-life balance. And in the marketing world, it was really hard for me to juggle like creating content to market my services and get clients while also balancing the work for clients. And I am prone to migraines. So like once a week I was getting a migraine and just out of commission. And that was really frustrating. And I also had PMDD and all these like hormonal issues, which I don't want to get into right now. And so it felt like doing consulting work was just not good for me and my body. And I needed something that would create more flexibility and yeah, like where I wasn't having to like hustle all the time. And so my therapist kind of helped me open my eyes and see, well, if I did art, I wouldn't have to be like on client calls as much. It wouldn't be as like draining for me. And because I could just paint and then I could choose when I want to film to paint. And if I had a migraine that day, I could just rest. And on days that I did have more energy, I could, paint and create content, because there's not as much of like a set schedule as like with my consulting clients. It was like, okay, well, every Tuesday at 10 a.m., we have our team meeting. So Yeah, I went for it. And something that I've always believed in is anytime I'm doing something new, a new business, new industry, I like to have a mentor, whether it's I'm taking an online course to learn about that thing, or I'm hiring and paying a mentor, like a coach one on one, or having like a friend or like an acquaintance that I can just kind of pick their brain. And I think it's really important to have some sort of mentorship or training or coaching when you're learning a new skill or a new business, just to kind of help you avoid some of the pitfalls and just kind of get there a little bit quicker without making as many painful mistakes. So I started working with a mentor. His name is Droid Henry, and I took his course, and he also has like one on, or not one-on-ones, but like group calls. And so I learned through him how to get really good at figuring out who is my ideal client, and like how to experiment with my painting styles to really find out what's my style, what's my niche, and find my voice as an artist, as well as how to research and find trends that like make sense for me to jump on to try to get more exposure. And I started working with him because like I specifically decided to work with him over other coaches in like the art space, because he had a lot of students that were able to create Instagram reels that went viral, so like 1 million or more views. And I did get there. It took me 2 years until I had my first video get 1 million views. But through that process of that 2 years, I learned, like I started off painting like women's faces and flowers, and then got into like landscapes. And for a while I thought that like painting the beach and like that type of landscape was my style. And then realized that actually like painting horses on the beach I really love. And then that was like a pivotal point where he said to me like, okay, either you stick with beaches or you're pivoting and you're painting horses, but you can't paint both because they're two different ideal clients. And without hesitation, it was just like an intuitive nudge. It was like horses. Like, and when I think about why did I want to be an artist? Why did I want to have my own business to have more flexibility? And for me, the goal, the dream has always been, I want a horseback ride. I want to have my own horse. I want to have flexibility to go up to the stables on Monday morning or a Wednesday morning. And so, yeah, so horses just made sense. Again, it was a leap of faith. It was a painful period. I think I went like 6 months without selling anything because I was building, like, I had built up an audience on social media for people that love my beaches and landscapes. And then when I started painting horses, it was like I was trying to post and do both, and my follower count would go up and then down and then up and down. I was really frustrated. And that's when my mentor said, like, you have to pick one or the other. And so I doubled down on horses, and took me a while until I had a collection of horse paintings. And then I dropped the beach paintings. So even though I still have a lot of beach and abstract paintings inspired by the beach, I just stopped posting those. I still have some in galleries. But yeah, that was a bit of like something that I didn't feel ready to do, but needed to happen. And so I'm glad I did it. Like I said, it was a long, painful period of time without selling anything, while I kind of trained the algorithm to build out my audience of people that love horses. And it's been a challenging but great experience. It has taught me to keep just trusting myself and my intuition. And when I get a vision, just keep focusing on that, and don't worry about trying to have all the little pieces in the right place, or, all your ducks in a row before you do something, because there's never going to be a right time. And yeah, just lean into the life that you want to live. And I think if you're genuine and authentic about it, you will start to attract those people. And so I'm super grateful that now I get to spend my Mondays at the stables, hanging out with horses, riding. Sometimes I paint with the horses. I've painted with the horses, trying to teach the horses how to paint, which I have another video of. Sometimes I'll just paint with the horses around. I also bring my paintings up to the stables to film like my reveal videos for social media up there. And yeah, like, I'm not exactly where I want to be, but I know that from experience from other industries and businesses that I've, worked in and built, that if you stay focused on, what you want and that vision, and you're flexible on how to get there, and you listen to feedback but also filter that feedback, you'll figure it out. And I will say, on this journey, the one of the hardest parts has been feedback and criticism, because when I started sharing my artwork with, on Instagram, when it was just for fun, it was a hobby, it was just my friends and family that saw it, and they were very supportive. Like, no one said anything like rude or mean about my artwork. And then as I started to, follow the marketing strategy that I learned from Droid, my videos started going from like 300 views to like 1,000 views, and then 10,000 views, and then 100,000 views. And that was when I started getting strangers that didn't know me, knew nothing about me, nothing about my artwork, nothing about my journey. And some of those people posted really cruel comments on my artwork. Some of it I was able to be like, oh, whatever, like they don't know what they're talking about, or I don't care. But especially with like my abstract work, people would just say, like, one person said it looked like my dog took a piss on. Oh, speaking of which, she's coming to say hi. Hi. Yeah, this guy said that my painting looked like my dog lifted her leg and took a piss on the canvas. I had someone else say that my artwork looked like it had no soul. I had people say, actually, one painting, it was funny. So I actually sold this painting at my exhibition, but I had still posted the video, I think, after the exhibition, or maybe I had posted the video and then it started picking up traction after my exhibition. But anyways, the point is that video of this specific painting got over 100,000 views. I had already sold it, but there were comments on it like, oh, that looks like you spilt your paint. Like, what's that smudge? Like, this isn't art. And I'm so glad. So that was the first video that I started getting really negative criticism. And I'm so grateful that it happened on that piece, because I had already sold it. And the person that I sold it to, he said, Christy, raise your prices. Like, this artwork is beautiful. This is really great. And he actually sells artwork separately through a business. And he was telling me, like, raise your prices. And so that gave me the confidence to not listen to the negative criticism. But there's also been negative critiques like, hey, your artwork needs more movement. Or, yeah, I think that was the comment that I took it as constructive criticism. Like, how then can I create movement in my art and more emotion? I've also gotten feedback that, I should use more color or whatever, like just lots of negative feedback. And I think it's important to use feedback as information. There's going to be some feedback that is just not useful, and just ignore it. And some days it's harder to ignore it. Some days I'm like, oh, whatever. But then other days it really kind of sits with me, and I have to process it and like do some meditation, some journaling, and just kind of let go. And then there's other feedback that has made me really turn inward and ask, like, well, do I want to go in that direction? So I had someone, this wasn't negative feedback, but I had people telling me, because I reach out to everyone that follows me just to kind of ask what resonates about my artwork. And I had some people start telling me that, like, they love the bright colors and like pop art style in my work. And I didn't see my style as that. I really love textured neutrals and earth tones. And so when I started getting that feedback, that to me was information of like, okay, clearly you have too many different styles. And if some people are feeling like your artwork is pop art and I don't want to be creating pop art, then I need to move away from whatever that style is and focus on what I see my style is and what I want to see it as. So yeah, I feel like I've been rambling way too long. Hopefully you found this helpful. And yes, I want to just leave you with a couple of words of advice. So whether you are building a business, you're at the beginning of a business, or thinking about pivoting your business or career, I think it's really important to just focus on having that mindset of, no matter what it is, you can figure it out. And staying focused on, what do you want? What is that vision? What is that life that you dream of living? Because it's going to be different from other people's. And ask for help, ask for feedback, ask for advice, but be careful who you ask and careful who you listen to. I always choose to ask advice and listen to advice from people that are where I want to be. So if someone has built a business that to me feels like the type or feeling or style or vibe of a business, or has achieved a goal that I want to achieve, I'm going to listen to that person. I'm going to do what they tell me. If there's someone that's giving me advice on an area and I do not admire that area of their life that they're trying to give me advice on, I'm not going to follow it. There are other business owners and coaches out there that have been very successful by their definition or other people's definition of success. But when I look at their business and like, to me, it just feels like a nightmare. Like, that's not the type of business that I want to build. So I'm not going to take advice from those people. So moral of the story is get clarity on your vision, what an amazing dream life looks like, and then just keep taking intuitive steps forward, and don't wait to have all your ducks lined up in a row, because that's never going to happen. There's always going to be a reason or excuse not to do it. So just start taking action. Just do little things, and eventually those little things, kind of those breadcrumbs, lead you to a path. I never imagined 10 years ago that I would be a full-time artist, painting horses. I never imagined 10 years ago that I would be spending every Monday at the stables with horses and hanging out with horse people and painting their horses. But I kept asking myself, as I was at these points where life was just feeling hard or frustrating, of, what is that life that I want, and keep moving towards that. So yeah, again, I rambled too much. Sorry. Hopefully you found this helpful. Let me know in the comments. And if you're interested in learning more about my story, or watching me paint horses or paint with horses, or just hang out at the stables, hit that subscribe button. Thanks, and I hope you have a beautiful day.